MMA Fighting Studios, this is Between the Links. And now, your host, Mike Heck.
The iconic voice of Esterlin welcomes you to a brand new edition of BTL. Happy Thursday to us all. Happy you can all join us at an earlier start time this week. The little man has state testing this week, so I have to cart him off to that every single day around noon. So hence why we're starting a little bit earlier this week, but no time to waste. A lot to discuss, including UFC 315 this weekend. The promotions return to the Great White North. That'll be the back half of the program. But let us introduce the combatants. First, figured with the UFC heading to the Great White North, we needed some Canadian flavor on the program. So let us say hello to the Prince of Positivity, the man behind the MMA Fighting Global Rankings, the man who joins me every week on to the next one to do some post-UFC event matchmaking and much more. He is my best friend, Alexander K. Lee. Where is he? Welcome back, AK.
Oh, bonjour, bonjour. Comment ça va? Comment ça va? La belle Provence, Montreal. Very excited for the show. Yes, I did No Bets Bar this week too, Mike. I'm everywhere. I don't know if I'm doing the preview show, but we'll do it on to the next one too. Yeah, wait, listen, I'm not in Montreal. I'm not in the great province of Quebec, but I'm feeling the Canadian energy. I'm feeling the Canadian love, and I'm always happy to represent.
And it's always great to have you here, and it's always great to have his opponent back on the show. Gas stations, hide your hot dogs, and everyone watching this right now, this is where you put on your sunglasses. You have a nice glass of milk in front of you because the takes are going to be hot. They're going to be spicy. From my fellow New Englander, one half of the Morning Combat Tag Team Champions of the World, rocking the Total Package Lex Luger t-shirt, Brian Campbell is here. BC, welcome back, my friend.
Thank you. I have the guts to wear this because I also have a total package. I'm just happy that disbarred lawyer ain't here this week, right? But at least I get to go one-on-one with Don Davis's favorite journalist. So this will be fantastic. Meet me on LinkedIn after the show, guys. There we go. All right.
That's incredible. So let's get into this. What a matchup it shall be. So stick around. You're going to love it. Let's first close the door on this past weekend before we get to UFC 315. And BC, I'm glad you're here because, look, there was a lot of boxing last weekend, but I want to focus on Friday and Saturday if I could. The Ring Magazine promotion led by His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh, the Riyadh season cards. They have this Times Square event on Friday, and the way they laid it out is kind of like the open workout for WrestleMania 14 in downtown Boston. We're just going to put a ring in the center of the city and people could just come watch fights. And that's not really how it turned out. It was kind of cool visually. And we had Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney competing on the card. Of course, they're not fighting each other because why the frig do that, right? And then Garcia loses to Rolly Romero and Devin Haney delivers a fight comparable to Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis in a win. It was like an Apex card in one of the most known areas in all of the world and not great boxing. And then Saturday, Canelo fights and lays down a stinker as well, but in a victory. So BC, outside of those who work for Ring or DAZN, pretty much everybody has shit on all of this. So let me ask you, where does that Friday, Saturday doubleheader rank for all-time crappy doubleheaders in recent memory for boxing?
2 snaps up, as the folks in Living Color used to say. Hated it. It's one of the worst weekends of all time. I mean, what are we trying to do here if it wasn't for the levels of Cardenas, and Naoya Inoue on Sunday night with the card Top Rank had in Las Vegas, right? Imagine that, a card in Las Vegas with a Mexican-American on it to celebrate Cinco de Mayo. If it wasn't for that, I don't know what else we would be saying. This was a major step back in the sport. It was normally the sport's biggest pay-per-view weekend, Cinco de Mayo. Hey, everybody go to Las Vegas and see Canelo or Floyd or Oscar or whoever's on top in this sport. And it turned into this multi-city boondoggle of overspending. And I know that the narrative to some degree has turned into, well, maybe these fighters are getting paid too much money. They're getting soft. Well, let's talk about the guy who's paying them too much money, who's putting on these shows, who took the biggest star in boxing, Canelo Alvarez, away from Las Vegas or Dallas or Mexico City or Guadalajara and put him in Riyadh at 7:30 a.m. local time in front of less than 4,000 people against an opponent who's known for circling away and not initiating contact. Yes, this was a worst case scenario, 48 hours of the sport. We came in with a card in Times Square that everybody could be a part of, 3 of the biggest young stars competing, and we exited with people standing 1 block away behind 15-foot walls with the ring banner on it, watching from a soundless screen in Times Square as one after another, some of these biggest young stars blew away their current marketability or current stock. And we also, by the way, lost interest in what would have been a absolutely no-brainer, can't miss Garcia Haney rematch. So yeah, what am I feeling right now? I guess happy in the end, as we criticize Turki Al-Sheikh for putting 3 fight cards on DAZN pay-per-view in 8 days, 3 pay-per-views in 8 days. At least the masses didn't see what went on Friday or Saturday night. I had argued with all that money being spent, can you float a time buy on big CBS? Can you do something to push this sport out to the people? I think this weekend we were just lucky that the only people that saw it were people that stole the event or the hardest of hardcores, because this is not what I consider the future of boxing. This was the point case scenario of what happens when you make it too much about everything else but the sport. And as the great Hall of Famer Tim Bradley said in an epic rant on Saturday, when you use boxers as pawns to put forth a larger message, when it stops being about what really matters in the ring, sometimes you're going to get exactly this. This weekend wasn't about boxing at all, except for what you saw Sunday night in Las Vegas.
The Ring tweeting out that they were early preliminary pay-per-view buys were around 260,000. I actually laughed out loud when I saw that. I thought that was one of the funniest tweets I've ever seen. But AK, we had a lot of responsibilities with MMA fighting. There were a million fight cards, it seemed, and you were a big part of the boxing coverage this past weekend.
Yes.
Tough scenes out there, was it not? Some tough days for you.
By the way, in addition to the pay-per-view numbers, I'm also enjoying the foot traffic numbers. Like, 400,000 people passed through times. Don Davis and I are proud of you for that stat. That is brilliant stuff. I hope Don the next time like he holds an event like at a that's one of those hotels that's also a casino or something, says, man, like 15,000 people passed through the casino this week or something because they knew the PFL. I don't know. It's just like that's brilliant. Like that's brilliant stuff. It's not a lie. They did Times Square. A lot of people passed through. There just happened to also be a boxing event going on at the same time. This was tough, man. This was hard to watch. Like, I'm sure some of us feel a bit vindicated about, like, who have been questioning this model that Turki Al-Sheikh has been putting forward, that everyone he's associated with is kind of pushing, because it is different. It is new. In some ways, it's exciting, and in some ways, a lot of people, we were kind of cautious about it. And we've seen previous events these big events where even when they went well, the whole like kind of having these events almost strictly in front of like VIPs and rich people and very closed off, it's really noticeable. It really comes off. Like, I kind of sympathize a little with what Ryan Garcia said after the fight. No excuses for putting on a bad performance, don't get me wrong. Full credit to Rolly Romero as well. But saying like, yeah, it felt weird. It felt weird being outdoors. It felt weird not having a crowd that was like just fully engaged for watching the fight. Like, they were just there to be seen, to be at an event. It was outdoors, all the noise, traveling upwards. So it was strange. It was strange for him as to watch. I'm sure it was strange for him to fight in. It's a real shame that it went down like this too, because again, people are going to use this as an indictment of boxing again, and we'll let me get back to that in a second. But also, we just had the amazing like Eubank Ben fight the week before, and that fight was so well built. It's an example of like what makes boxing work, because when you focus on a storyline and a fight that people have been waiting for years, you build up this one fight properly, right? You're not building up an event; you're building up this one fight. And to MMA fans, like, one of the reasons so many people got into MMA was like, oh no, well, we don't want to just watch one fight. Like, we want to be invested in the whole card. And that's awesome. Like, that model works for MMA. We have seen it. The UFC is a $1 billion company now. It works for MMA. Maybe it can work for boxing someday too. But I think over the past couple of years, we've seen like, it's boxing and MMA are just not the same. They might have similar audiences. There's some crossover appeal. You can certainly market some aspects of them the same way. But boxing is really at its best when you have that rivalry, you have that one fight. So, they tried to load it. They tried to have Garcia, Haney, again, not against each other, but with the obvious implication, both these guys are going to show out. We're building up to their rematch. You've got Canelo. He's going to take care of school. And then he's going to, we have already announced the Crawford fight's going to come up. But it was just too much. It was too much. It was too fast. I think Ariel was saying, I think on Monday, like it's really not meant to be a sport where you're always looking ahead, where you're always saying, well, we hope we're assuming this matchup's going to happen and this is going to work out this way. And then the matchup we really want, like that, now we're building to it properly. It's like, no, you got to kind of just do these things. They should have had Haney fight. They should have just had Haney and Garcia fight again. I don't know if they could have made Canelo and Crawford happen so early, but they should have figured something else out for Cinco de Mayo weekend. And again, having it in a very sterile environment as opposed to in Mexico or even in, like, again, another place just where you could have a nice, lively, appreciative crowd would have been so much better. So I don't want to crap on the whole idea of the weekend. Like, I don't want to say, like, on paper, this was a terrible idea. I don't know if you could predict that so many stink bombs would be dropped in the ring. You certainly could have imagined some scenarios, but yeah, they got the worst case scenario, and it just hurts the business a lot. It really hurts the business a lot. I'm curious how things are going to look for TKO boxing debut, Crawford Canelo. It's the fight people want, so it shouldn't hurt it. But I am curious what the reaction will be now going forward.
Yeah, we'll get there in a sec. Can you imagine if Dana White goes on Instagram and he's like, hey, UFC 317, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do Islam Makachev versus Grant Dawson for the lightweight title. And then we're going to have Ilia Topuria fight Mark Madsen, who's coming out of retirement. And then in October in Abu Dhabi, they're going to fight each other. Like, it's just insane. Like, why? I don't understand why we do this double booking thing like we did with Garcia and Haney and just have them fight other people in hopes that we get something later in the year, AK. Why does boxing do these stay busy fights? And because of what happened this past Friday in Times Square, AK, is there still any juice at all with a Garcia Haney rematch? Like, if they made this, would people be happy about this? Would they be positive, or would this be met with like a collective, all right, I guess?
Well, firstly, like, the funny thing is, I like the idea of tune-up fights. I like the idea of, like, setup fights in general. Like, in principle, I like the idea, and not in regards to Garcia and Haney. I think for someone like it definitely doesn't work for someone like a Canelo. I think at this point in his career, this is the kind of guy, like, you can't be giving him tune-up fights anymore. He's just not going to get up for these fights because in a perfect world, you give them a tune-up fight, they show out, they either put on like a brilliant 12-round performance, or they just take the other guy out, and you're like, yeah, man, this is why this guy's on another level. I want to see them fight whoever is supposed to be their big opponent that we've been lining them up for. But Canelo is not in that mode anymore. He's not going to go in and show out in a tune-up fight. He's going in, making a ton of money, trying not to get injured, and doing just enough to win. Garcia and Haney is a little bit trickier. Like, you would have hoped that they would have taken this opportunity to stamp it a little more. But I think, as you kind of suggested, like, they're so focused on each other. They should be professional. They should have put on better performances, but they're so focused on each other. And I think they assume that everyone else is as well. That, oh, well, no matter what happens on Saturday, whatever in this fight, there's always going to be that fight with me and Ryan. There's going to be a fight with me and Devin, whoever you're thinking of. So I think this definitely hurt interest in the rematch. All the controversy around the first one, good or bad, it was so, like, people wanted to see it right. If Ryan Garcia had not been suspended and you would have been able to book that within the next 4 to 6 months, it would have done incredible numbers. Numbers would have been insane. The year off hurt it. I think Ryan Garcia's personality in general and his behavior and his getting suspended, not a good thing. The lawsuits that came up after just had people tuning out, and I'm not saying Haney wasn't right to sue him, but I'm like, once fans start seeing that stuff come up, that does not enhance a fight. That is just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to know about all this extracurricular stuff. I just want them to get in the ring. And now we are a year later. Now we're coming off these terrible, terrible performances. Like I said before, I don't think Canelo Crawford is going to be hurt too much by what happened this weekend. I do think Haney Garcia took a hit. So they're going to have to hype. They're going to have to get back to hyping it up. It could absolutely still be a blockbuster event, but man, those you got a lot of people who are saying probably, I don't want to see either of these guys fight again, much less against each other.
Yeah, and like, when I went off on that little mini rant, BC, it's not saying that I don't agree with a tune-up fight, but, like, if we're gonna do it, at least do the WWF Superstars on Saturday mentality, where you have the big stars doing squash matches. Like, throw Garcia in there with, like, the third worst guy in the division and have Haney in there at like the 4th worst guy in the division, just have him kill him. And then, at least with superstars, like they would get run over. Undertaker would squash Barry Horowitz in 35 seconds, but then we know he's going to have a coffin match with Kamala at SummerSlam. So we will spend money to watch that. Maybe have a face-off and some sort of rambunctious thing that happens in the middle of the ring. So again, we know what's next for Canelo. We're going to talk about that in a second. But as far as Garcia Haney, like, is there still juice there with how badly both of these guys' fights went on Saturday? What do you think of all this?
I don't think though. And I see Haney coming out and saying, I still want the rematch. We signed the contract, but like, let's say a few things that need to be said. We saw 3 of the 5 worst fights in CompuBox history in consecutive nights in terms of least total punches attempted over 12 rounds. CompuBox goes back to 1985, by the way. So 40 years of history. And Canelo himself attempted the least amount of any fighter in a 12-round bout in the history of CompuBox. So you see what we were up against here. Specifically to Garcia and Haney, I get what you're saying about this probably should have been more of a squash. These were supposed to be celebrity squashes. Rolly Romero had been knocked out in 2 of his last 4 fights. The ones that he had won, one had been completely controversial and no one accepted it as a win. And the other one, he was in a get-well fight against Manuel Jaimes, and because of his weight cut, he had no energy. He looked dead in there. Same thing with Jose Ramirez, who still had a great record, a former unified champion that fought Haney, but he came in looking like no power. We assumed he was washed. You saw the odds. It's weird here. Do the fighters deserve the blame just as much as the organizers? Yes. But the organizers deserve blame because how it was handled. It's not that this hasn't been done before, the idea of marinating and doing tune-up fights where you're kind of telling everybody what's going to happen next. But they took it much further this time, actually having the contract signed for the rematch, which maybe, because there's no title at stake, told the fighters in their head, it doesn't really matter how I look here. The other part of it was what we talked about earlier. They put the tune-up fights on pay-per-view on an app like DAZN, where the only people that have it in the United States are hardcore boxing fans. So no casuals are going to run into it. If you want to build up to the Haney Garcia 2 payday, you put the setup fights on an app or under some form of access where everyone can see it and they go, oh, wow, this is getting juicy. Let me pay for the rematch when it's time. Everything from this past weekend was done for the purpose of what was really going on. The Saudi flex, the further of the sports washing, and the setup for what's coming, which is a TKO future in combat sports for all of us. So even though it might not be Turki Al-Ashik's fault that Devin Haney comes out and just sabotages his own brand with one of the most absurd, safe performances we've ever seen, when all the pressure was on him to show us that last year was a fluke and maybe Ryan was on Osterine and all these things of maybe the Haney lawsuit made sense. And on the flip side, you got Ryan Garcia in a tailor-made fight for him to get a knockout. Fights passively, gets completely disciplined by a guy who's not even known as a good boxer. Now we're looking at Ryan Garcia going, forget the star power. He never was good enough to begin with. And the one fight that he was great against Haney, clearly he was on Osterine. You can see the difference between the 2 fights. So it was a worst case scenario. But to me, again, it's a wake-up call of who do you want running boxing moving forward? Do you want boxing people who have history and knowing what they're doing? Or do you want a guy who's basically doing fantasy sports video game matchmaking? Not only were the press conferences for this event telling you that Garcia Haney was next in September, too bad for those B-side opponents that are sitting there on the dais, right? We also got Ryan Garcia saying, and then I'm going to fight Teofimo the fight after, and then I'm going to fight Boots Ennis the fight after. We're putting way too much the cart before the horse here, putting a fight in Times Square, not caring about the atmosphere, not caring that the fans couldn't even see it, even though up to the day before, they're still telling everybody publicly, come on down, even though the media, which didn't find out if their credentials were approved until the afternoon of the day of, were not allowed inside the fences, I think, except for 2, Ariel Helwani and Chuck Mindenhall, and I think one was a guest. Everybody else was told to go across the street, no internet access, no volume on the TV, but you can watch from a room. I'm saying when you go to this level, again, putting the biggest star in the sport on Cinco de Mayo at 7:30 a.m. in Riyadh in front of nobody, you're almost asking for it. So yes, Turkey quickly rushed in Terrence Crawford after the Canelo fight. Yes, we can all look ahead to September, maybe on Netflix, Allegiant Stadium. I think this whole weekend came across as a warning sign, though. Do you want all the food in the buffet to taste the exact same? Because it's coming. It's the TKO takeover, and you're going to be paying more, and you're going to be complaining more, and you're going to have to listen to me on this program and many others in this business telling you I told you so.
Yeah, let's just go right there. September 12th, it's happening. Canelo Bud Crawford, Allegiant Stadium. It's the day before UFC 320 in Guadalajara, so it's going to be a very busy weekend. And as was announced with this fight, BC, this is the first big main event under the TKO boxing umbrella, and Uncle Dana White will be the promoter. He'll be the guy standing in between these two fighters. Your reaction to this being the big TKO boxing, here we are, Dana being involved as the promoter? Is this good? Is it bad? Like, how does this look to you for this particular fight and Dana being involved in it?
Well, it certainly wasn't a surprise, as this had been the rumor so aggressively. I mean, Turkey almost gave it away March 5th when him and Dana went on First Take and announced, the future partnership, which felt very telegraphed, by the way. But what we know about the TKO boxing future is it's going to be two things at once. It's going to be this prospect league where they're going to try to reinvent the wheel. Obviously, they're going to reset the pay structures. And hopefully for them, not hopefully for the rest of us, they're going to amend that Muhammad Ali Act so have complete control. The other half of it is what they're going to do initially and launch on September 12th. It's the idea of maybe these big stadium, big ones that'll be on Netflix, where TKO will be not so much the promoter in terms of like housing the fighters, but more of the platform. I guess when Dana said, when I get to boxing, think of me as HBO, this is probably what he's talking about. So is this the right matchup to bring in the casuals? Yes. And is Allegiant Stadium potentially the right venue to do that? Oh, yes. I mean, how many times do I have to hear myself bark at Dana White and say it's time for UFC to have these stadium nights where it's all about the atmosphere and the experience above the actual visual experience, these cultural events? I'm just wondering now if the pressure is even more on Crawford and Canelo to thrill us so that TKO can get kicked off well and survive, so that Turki Al-Sheikh can continue to justify to his bosses in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that he knows what he's doing and that all these losses that they're taking are going to have a means to the end of it. I'm just a little bit nervous because the only problem with the timing of the bout right now is we're coming off that performance for Canelo, where not only did he look older, right? We've seen him fight negative boxers before. We've also seen him chase them down and make sure that the judges have no doubts on the scorecards. This time we saw Canelo who just seemed unwilling to do exactly that. He was happy to just complain and say, yeah, I hate fighting these type of guys. Hey, Canelo, these type of guys, the runners, you know who don't run? That guy, David Benavidez, who used to be your mandatory for about 3 years, but you keep shamelessly avoiding. So what I'm saying is there's never been more pressure on Canelo to come out and shine and redeem who he actually is. I'm just a little bit worried that Crawford will see the blueprint that William School did. School had no business being in that fight or arguing that he won, but he did effectively play into that one kryptonite in Canelo's game. An opponent with quick feet, an opponent who can move and make him chase. That can be a problem. I just hope for all the parties involved, including the sport of boxing in general, that this isn't another snooze fest just because it might have to be for Crawford's best chance of winning. What TKO and Turkey needs is for this thing to feel like a Super Bowl and deliver on that level. I think the fact that people are doubting Canelo so seriously is going to bring the odds closer than they would have been. I'm just hoping it's also going to create a setup for us to get a really compelling fight that makes all of this worth it. If we take what we've seen over the past week, I mean, it's just one weekend, right? The weekend before, Ben Eubank, as you said, it just reminded us how much this Rocky movie of a sport can just thrill us. But I got to be confident if these guys really are taking the keys to the entire sport, that they know what the hell they're doing. So the pressure will be on September 12th, that Friday night, maybe on Netflix, to really show that we are in control of boxing moving forward. It's safe. You can trust us. This is what it's going to be like. It's a lot of pressure on one night, one fight, and two combatants in there.
AK, your thoughts on the fight, the promotion, Dana being involved, and how important is it that this fight delivers?
I'm sorry, Brian. Who was our friend there? I'm sorry for anyone listening on podcast form later. We had a beautiful cat show up.
This is Reggie Jackson. I mean, he is a
Reggie.
violent individual, but even a thug has moments, where they are like, "Yo, I need love." So yeah, Reggie's big combat sports fan, likes to bite his sisters in his free time. That's what we got going on here.
Reggie, what a magnificent creature! Thank you, Reggie Jackson, for being on the show. Listen, I'm hyped for this card. I think Brian is totally right about how Canelo has to deliver and how kind of janky this fight could be. Because I was just looking back at the school cards, and 115, there was a 115, 113 in there, and 116, 112. And like we're all saying, he had no business winning that fight. But this is boxing. Something super screwy could happen. And so if Crawford fights a more effective version of that, I don't know, man, split decision, majority decision, crazy stuff happens all the time. So it kind of goes with what I was saying before, though. Like, I hope that they put all the focus on this card. I know the whole ethos of, Dana White getting into boxing is like, I'm going to bring, sort of what made the UFC successful. So I imagine he'll want to have at least two other notable fights on the card, probably some other title fight. Like they'll work something out. There's 9 million boxing titles out there. They can throw some other title fight on the co-main. But I hope they don't overdo it. I hope they don't try and get another big, like, oh, you like another built feud, long anticipated fight. I know it sounds stupid. I'm sure fans are like, well, the more great fights, the merrier. It's like, well, no. Boxing, like I said, focus on this one. You have an incredible headliner. This one fight sells this card. Allegiant Stadium is going to be unbelievable. I'm also incredibly curious how the TKO and sort of the Turkey Al Sheikh models are going to work out, because if Dana White is going to like UFC up the boxing world, that means, production wise, they've been pretty minimal in the past. We just, shout out to Ryzen. We just saw Ryzen this weekend too. And they did their usual, just crazy, just beautiful entrances. We had Mark Coleman and Yuri Prochazka in their underwear or the sumo gear, beating on drums. It was fantastic. UFC will never do anything like that. At the Times Square event, we had people coming out in like cool custom vehicles. Ryan Garcia came out in the Batmobile, and like, yeah, okay, you can roll your eyes, say this stuff's kind of stupid. But like that, to me, is sort of what has separated boxing and other combat sports promotions from the UFC, is that they can kind of go that extra mile and have these big ass entrances. So I wonder, how is this oil and water going to blend here? Because TKO has very much been about, or at least Dana White in general, very much been about like cost saving, very much been about, let's put the money, let's keep as much money in our pockets as possible. But for this first big event, I feel like they have to put a great foot forward. I cannot have it looking like some glorified UFC show. I know that's what fans are used to. I know there's going to be a lot of, I know the idea is, think about all these sort of MMA fans who have, were used to be boxing fans and kind of departed the sport, but now they're back because they hear Dana White's got a brand, TKO branded thing, and he's teaming up with this guy, this disruptor, Turkey Al Sheikh. Oh, I have to tune back in. And maybe they won't be bothered, by a lack of pomp and circumstance and pyro and all that. But I really need to see that. I think that has to be part of TKO boxing's long-term sustainability, is to not just be the UFC of boxing. As sexy as that may sound on paper, there's the potential to do something cool here. And maybe I'm setting myself up for a fall. Maybe I'm setting myself up for, Canelo Crawford just being a stink bomb. I'm setting myself up for the event just being this flat, sort of lifeless event. It's entirely possible, but I want to be optimistic. We have a long time until September. We have a long time to properly build up this fight. Fingers crossed, everyone stays healthy. Everything goes along as planned. And yes, it's easily watchable, like on Netflix, something like that, easily accessible to the fans. I'm hopeful, guys. I'm hopeful. I'm not letting this weekend drag me down. I'm hopeful.
I can't wait for the big reveal. $99.99 on the Zone pay-per-view for this fight, and people are going to freak out. But just do the thing, right? Make that money. That's what it's all about. But let's move on to the Ultimate Fighting Championship, because the UFC headed to Des Moines, Iowa this past weekend. A couple big things came out of that card. The point for round one goes to the captain of the Scally Cap, Brian Campbell. 1-0. Nicely done. Let the confetti fly. So yeah, let's close the book on UFC Des Moines, which was a card that happened. I mean, there was certainly some things that stood out, some early prelim finishes. Jeremy Stephens, Mason Jones is a lot of fun, but boy, this thing got sloggy at times, especially after that Stephens-Jones fight. But then Daniel Rodriguez, to me, was the MVP of this card. He saved the day with the knockout of Santiago Ponzinibbio. He was the spark that crowd needed at that time. And luckily, at midnight, 1 a.m., it carried over into the last two fights for sure. And there were two big storylines that came out of this card. And AK, I want to start with you, and I want to start with Cory Sandhagen because he beat the hell out of Davis and Figueiredo. This fight was not competitive. Unfortunately, it ended in an injury. Figgy got Ryan hauled, which is never a good thing. But all in all, dominant showing from Cory Sandhagen. And AK, this man wants one thing and one thing only. He wants a title shot. He wants the winner of the Merab Dvalishvili versus Sean O'Malley rematch at UFC 316. Is that what he's going to get, AK? Did this performance give him that nod at 135 pounds?
He's going to get it. And Cory, I know you're going to be in Newark, but do not accept the backup role. Am I muted?
Oh no, I was setting you up.
Oh, you did. Oh, okay.
It's building drama.
No. Okay. I understand he will very likely be the backup. He has been saying he'll be in Newark. He'll be in Newark, New Jersey. He plans to be there for that fight. I feel like he deserves, there's that wonderful word in combat sports. I feel like he deserves a full camp. He deserves to be billed as the guy, not as a backup. He's done enough. I know detractors will point to, look at all the opportunities he had in the past. Like, there's a reason he didn't get a title shot in the past. I said this many times in the lead up to Des Moines. Aljamain Sterling, TJ Dillashaw, Petr Yan, Umar Nurmagomedov. All the four guys, his only 4 UFC losses, all guys that beat him, and then their very next fight was for the undisputed bantamweight title. So clearly he has been put in title eliminators before. This one wasn't even officially a title eliminator. I remember I wasn't thinking that the winner of the Des Moines main event would necessarily be guaranteed the number 1 spot. But seeing how Cory performed, thinking about how the landscape of the division has been shaping out recently, I think his post-fight work was really good. His promo work was a bit short, but he doesn't try to do anything on the mic that he's not comfortable with, and I think that's a good thing. He's not going to do some crazy long, like, pro wrestling style call out of someone. It's just silly. He's being very realistic that they have this title fight coming up next month. He'll be ready to fight whoever emerges as the victor. Even if it's a tie, let's say there's unfortunately a draw and Merab retains, I would hope they wouldn't run that back. I would hope you would just give Cory his shot. It just makes sense right now. It makes sense right now. Umar has to earn his shot back. I know he just beat Cory, but he has to earn his shot back. You're not running that one back anytime soon. Petr Yan, yes, love it. Would love to see Petr and Cory fight again. Their first fight was amazing, one of my favorite fights of 2021. But again, we had Petr fight Merab before. So if Merab retains, I don't know if you can sell that now, even though Merab has been calling to fight Petr. I think he was like, I'd want to fight Petr next instead of Sean O'Malley's, but there we are. So I came out of Des Moines like feeling really good for Cory Sandhagen's chance of getting a title shot. I know it's never really this clean. I mean, we didn't think Sean O'Malley was going to get a rematch in the first place, but here it is. Take care of that business. Let's settle that. Let's move on. Even if O'Malley wins, please don't run that one back immediately. There's no one is asking for it. If O'Malley pulls it off, knocks out Merab, fantastic. Boom. Cory Sandhagen gets an O'Malley fight. There's some heat there. They've been building that up for a while. And Merab should be happy to earn his shot back. I'm sure he's loving these championship checks. I'm sure he's loving the attention. But is it too much to ask him to earn his shot back? So, Cory, in my mind, you are the number 1 contender at 135 pounds.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry too much if Sean O'Malley wins the title. I don't think they're going to be calling Merab's number very quickly. It just kind of seems that way, just looking from the outside in. But BC, to Cory Sandhagen, is he next? If you had the mighty pencil, is he fighting the winner of Merab versus O'Malley too?
He is. It's his time right now at 33 years old, considering he's had that sort of Bispingian run without that rock hold cash in at the end where he's gotten so close to number 1 contendership and loses that big fight. One of them, of course, being that interim title opportunity against Petr Yan. So I know you could be saying, well, BC, what about Yan owns a recent victory over Cory? The Cory thing that helps him the most, I think, is that, think about it. We're getting this Merab O'Malley rematch that people didn't necessarily want. It feels like a rematch that's maybe a little, not unnecessary, but a little quick. And it just so happened that way that your argument of who should have been anyway would have been either him or Petr Yan. And I don't mean to twice in a row when we hit this same sort of crossroads go, sorry, Petr Yan, but you want the opportunity to have fresh matchups. And the best thing going for Cory is that the two people fighting for the title in a rematch that people didn't necessarily overwhelmingly want is that he hasn't fought either of those guys. So it's automatically a fresh matchup. And yes, even though you're going to make Jan go back through another hurdle when he seems to be in the midst of his own rejuvenation and resurgence after he went hard as hell during that stretch of fighting one killer after another, I think because you have the opportunity to make Jan versus Umar in between to create that next number one contender, well, now you're cooking, because what if Sandhagen takes the title? You're really setting up the idea of more fresh matchups in there. So let's go Cory Sandhagen. He did what he had to do. It turns out that Figgy came in ill. His team wanted him to pull out. But this ain't no injury loss. It was caused by Sandhagen. He knew what he was doing. I love in fight number 2 under Trevor Whitman who he has become. I think he's using what has always been his calling card, the constant movement and variety, but using it in a more efficient and smart way, even smarter than before, that it's time for him. Let's see what he can do at the title level. Let's get through 316 and let's give Sandhagen his chance.
In the co-main event, BC, Reinier de Ridder. This guy is just a hoss in there. He's fun. He's a little reckless, but in the best possible way. Shades of DDP, as Jed says, and I think a lot of other people see that as well. RDR shows his experience, shows he's a beast. He's 3-0 in the UFC with 3 finishes. There's been a lot of shine on him this week and much deserved. But I want to talk about the opponent. I want to talk about Bo Nickal because he's become a giant story coming out of this card. And people are dumping on him for this loss. While you have the other fighters, you have coaches defending Bo Nickal. Maybe it was too much too soon. Biggest takeaway for you, BC, on the Bo Nickal side, and I guess the more important question, where does Bo Nickal go from here?
My biggest takeaway is I can't believe how many people aggressively turned on him so hard and did the whole fraud check thing. He was never good enough to begin with, blah, 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 blah. The reality is, were we, if I'm counting media and fan reaction as a whole, too harsh on Bo? We were, but it's not as if there wasn't fuel to get us there. I think there's a couple sins in MMA that fans just can't let go by, right? Apparently, like racism and stuff like that, fans are very quick to just be like, yeah, when's your next fight? But stuff like when they feel you're a fraud or they feel that you are, I guess in this case, what's the word I'm looking for Bo Nickal? Disillusioned, delusional maybe, because after that very close fight with Paul Craig, in which he didn't lean on his strengths and shoot one time and was in some ways lucky to get a close decision in a horrific striking match, he was way too confident afterwards. Like, yeah, I needed the experience. This is what I wanted to do. I'm going to be fine. And when you mix that with his other comments over the past 6 months, I should be minus 1,000 when I face Khamzat Chimaev, or DDP, give him to me tomorrow. I guarantee you I'll finish him. It's not that we don't want confident fighters, but when that is married with somebody who's not all that active for having super prospect status, and he did have super prospect status. He had that golden boy image to him because of his amateur success. He got 2 showcase opportunities on the Dana White Contender Series, and then given the ultimate setup with his first few opportunities in the UFC, where every single time it was like an event to come see this bright young prospect, including at UFC 300. I just think his lack of activity has had people maybe quietly questioning, does he have the passion? Does he have the right mindset, the right built-in fight IQ, the right everything? And I think not only did he maybe expose that in this loss to people, I think even more, look, us keyboard warriors, we're not in there taking the shots. So you always have to be careful at what you're questioning. But there were a lot of people who felt like Bo could have continued in that fight or could have at least responded better to the first absolutely legitimate sequences of vulnerability, of pushback, of being in trouble, on the ropes, so to speak. The way that he, quote unquote, behaved, as Teddy Atlas likes to say, didn't seem so much like a fighter. It didn't seem so much, of course, like this bright prospect. So when you break the fans' hearts in that regard, I guess I can understand them coming out with pitchforks. The reality is, though, we don't count losses in MMA against people as aggressively for a reason. There's so many ways to lose in this game, and you don't come into this game as a fully finished expert. You're constantly evolving and adding. So in reality, if he has that winner mentality, is Bo Nickal in position to still be just fine? Yeah, there still is that potential for him. But there's two things he's got to do quickly. One, get active, get serious, show us you have that passion to be great, fight 4 times in 1 year, improve incrementally the right way. And number two, within that improvement, show us that striking game is anywhere as dangerous or even efficient as what he can do on the ground. This could be the ultimate wake-up call he needed badly. I think in the long run, we're going to look back and say we were a little bit too aggressive against basically retiring him after this. But he also needed this wake-up call. So things do happen for a reason. Mike, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you get exactly what you need. That's what this MFer needed.
No, I think you make a great point. And here's my biggest concern, AK. You know this. We talk about the middleweight division all the time. We matchmake for the middleweight division. And there are certain instances where the UFC matchmakers, who as a whole have done a pretty good job like building up talent, they have dropped the ball on some people. And they have dropped the ball on some people in this division. Edmund Shabazian is the most perfect example. He's just lighting the world on fire. He's fighting the right opponents, and then they chuck him in there with stylistically the worst possible matchup. And then when it doesn't go well, the UFC says, well, if at first you don't succeed, let's try again. And let's throw him in there with another grappling dude who will just take him down. And then, you know what, AK? You know what they did again? They did it again. And they keep doing this. And he'll get a win. And you know what would be a great idea? We're trying to build a Mitch Shabazi. Let's throw him in there with Gerald Mearshart. That's a terrific idea. A guy who doesn't get killed and can kill you on the ground. None of these things are working out very well. Let's throw him in there with Fluffy Hernandez. Let's do that.
My best friend, please. You're going on an Edmund rant again. We've talked about this.
But they can't. But again, they are in a position right now where they're at a fork in the road. Mm-hmm. What do they need to do to avoid Edmund Shabazian part 2? And I'm not saying like Edmund can't make his way back up. He's a talented guy. He's at a great gym and he can get better and better, but it's going to take a long time for him to get back there. He's got a tough matchup. I think he's fighting Petrosky next, which is boy, oh boy, that ain't fun. But what do we do here? What's next for Bo Nickal? How would you matchmake for him? I was not on to the next one this past week, so I missed the way you may have laid this out if you were asked about it, but how would you do it?
This is like Mike, this is like the last ranking show where we suddenly spent like 20 minutes talking about who was that PFL lightweight. Anyway, I did not expect an impassioned Edmund rant, but I get it. I understand. Yes, we don't want to go down that path. As Brian was talking, I was suddenly thinking to myself, like, this is something I actually didn't explore onto the next one. I actually haven't thought about since until just now. What would happen if Bo had won? I'm trying to think what happened if Bo had won. Obviously, if he had won in impressive fashion, let's say knocked RDR out, or let's say his wrestling was effective enough and he was able to, do work on the ground, get a TKO, or imagine if he submitted RDR, incredibly unlikely. But let's say he got in a finish somehow, or won in impressive fashion. Then that's great. Onward, upward, give him a top 5 opponent next, let's fast track him to a title. What would happen if it had been another like Paul Craig performance? That's my question. What if he had done just enough to win? I have to think in the long run that would be more harmful than what we had just seen. Winning is great. Of course, I'm sure people are thinking it's never bad to win. I'm like, it kind of is. If anything, I would also say the Paul Craig win, like the way that played out, the way he sort of reacted to it. He doesn't need to be apologetic for winning. He won a unanimous decision. He stayed undefeated when he beat Paul Craig. But he was a little defensive. He was a little like, well, I felt like I executed, sort of the game plan I wanted to. And I showed I'm more than just a grappler. I stood with this guy for 15 minutes and I won this fight. It wasn't great. And there was shaky moments in the Cody Brundage fight before that too. So this is one case where these wins really might have, if not hurt him, certainly not helped him in the short term. Now, what happened on Saturday with Reinier de Ridder, it has to help him. It has to help him. If he's the guy who he says he is, if he's the guy who we think he is, that he's been hyped up to be, then the old adage of you learn so much more from your losses than your wins, it could never be more applicable. Because just watching live, you could see, boy, he's going to learn a lot from getting swept there. Boy, he's going to learn a lot from not being able to get that takedown situation. He's going to learn a lot from getting getting lit up in just with the striking. He's going to learn a lot from taking those knees to the body. Sucks to lose. Sucks to get hurt. Sucks to have people say, oh, he quit. Oh, he was exposed. Fraud check. Hype train derailed. Every cliche you could see in the book written out. But again, this is a guy who was a 3-time NCAA wrestling champion. I'm not super familiar with his amateur career, but I have to believe there were bumps along the way, right? Before he became Bo Nickal, the dominant college wrestler, there must have been bumps along the way. He has to find that guy again. He has to channel that guy, that person who struggled. Be that guy again, and then take his prodigious gifts, add that motivation, get back in the gym, stay active. Please stay active. If Bo disappears for a year after this, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. I don't want to hear, oh, he's doing the right thing. He's taking the time off after suffering his first loss to go back and really like tool. I'm sorry, man. He might have to take another loss in the near future, right? Like this might be the stage of his career where we really learn if he's actually a fighter. We talk all the time about martial arts versus fighters. You have great martial artists, you have great fighters, you have some people who are both. You have some people who are just martial artists or just wrestlers, and when it actually gets no fight, when someone's beating the shit out of you, you got to find that fighter. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to get out of there. I'm not saying he quit, but I'm saying he didn't like getting hit. No, but most people don't. And he might be closer to most people in that regard than, the guys we think of as high-level elite fighters. So please, Bo, yes, at Brian's main point, stay active. Jed's been saying a lot too. We've all been saying, stay active, get back in there. You could lose your next fight. And guess what? That's not the end for you, Bo. So talented, still young, under 30, in a division where I think he has plenty of room to grow. That's always going to need fresh challengers. So overall, net positive. Again, I know that's my whole theme this week. My theme every week. Net positive. Had to take this loss. I think he should be, in the long run, will be glad it happened. And then he didn't just like eke out another decision, because that might have been, I don't know what that would have done for his actual championship hopes.
Yeah, he needs to Kevin Holland this shit. Just fight every 6 weeks at this
point. He can lose
Build
again. Losing is okay. Losing is okay. It's fine.
Totally fine. Kevin Holland's making a bag, and he doesn't win every fight that he has. So being active is how you get over in the sport. That's how you gain fans. So we'll see what happens with Bo Nickal, and we'll see what happens in Montreal. That's where we're heading right now. Not literally. UFC 315 coming up on Saturday. Point for round 2 goes to Charles Rackey's least favorite journalist, Alexander K. Lee, because he's Canadian. Yay! He's got to get some revenge for the good old US of A. Look at that! Look at that! Wow!
Yeah, number one dad,
and it matches the scally and everything. But yes, as we mentioned, UFC 315 coming up, a little over 48 hours time in Montreal, BC. We're gonna get to the title fights and some other standout things in a moment, but I don't know what it is about these Canada pay-per-views, man, but they don't get a lot of buzz because 297 was bad on paper. It was worse in execution. UFC 289 wasn't awful in execution, but it certainly was not a compelling card on paper outside of Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush. And now we have UFC 315, which is a pretty good card, honestly, but I've been saying for weeks now, this is going to be a pretty good card that nobody will watch. This is the UFC 206 of 2025, where it's sandwiched in between other big events. And our own Damon Martin screenshotted a photo of ticket sales earlier this week, which is not what we usually see in terms of all the blue colors that are migrating throughout this photo. And I looked at WrestleTix on Twitter yesterday. They're very good at talking about attendance. Arena set up for 19,846. 17,953 tickets have been sold. 1,401 of those tickets are already up for resale. Fans are like, nah, I'm outie. I'm selling these right back. 1,893 tickets untouched, plus the buzz for this one, BC. Where's the juice on this card? And why has the buzz been so not a thing?
Well, it's timing. It's where we are right now. It's also the fact, and I saw other people making this argument compellingly on the old Twitter that, it's NHL playoff season and you're coming to a place that you inexplicably haven't been in 2015, even though Montreal, notedly one of the best fight cities in this entire planet. And you're bringing a decently deep card, but in a lot of ways, a hardcore card. And also in the top 2 fights, the 2 title fights, the 4 competitors, none of them Canadian. So you're doing a couple things here against the grain. But when I mention timing, is look, this extended victory lap of TKO going, we beat the game. We got a TV setup that is built upon filling out content spaces and not worrying about numbers. It's why we don't spend money anymore to promote. Oh, yeah, we pretty much don't care about building stars anymore on top of that. And we might be holding our best stuff for wherever these TV negotiations go, especially if they sign with Netflix and need to come out with some big ticket bangers right away. They have no motivation under this current system to do the type of BTBs. I just created that. Get used to it. It's called big ticket bangers. It's the type of thing where you put a can't miss fight in the main event or a can't miss fighter who is on a certain arc with a certain story, and you bring it to a hungry market and you load the undercard with locals. Do we have locals on the undercard? Yes, but they don't have that one automatic hook. So when I say timing right now, even though TKO has still not only won the war, I mean, they're dominating every inch of it, they are starting to hear from the customers. And it's not in ways they care about, meaning media complaining or people tweeting. It's this. Maybe the UFC London card was a major turning point where people of the most hardcore variety were like, yeah, you're coming back tripling or 10xing the prices from the last time you were here, only it's a worse card in general. Look, I'm a hardcore fight fan, as much as people like to label me a casual. I really like a lot of these fights. Women's MMA right now could not be less interesting in totality. Yet I'm all in on the co-main event. I'm all in on the multiple other women's flyweight bouts that will, dictate the future and maybe the only women's division in the UFC that has depth, that has storylines and stuff like that going on. Yet that is not enough for a casual fan in Montreal who loves the UFC, because you're not getting Connor or Max or Poirier or Topuria or whomever. You're getting some very good fighters. I've come around on Belal. I'm remembering the net name for life. But you get what you sow what you reap what you sow is really where I was trying to go right there. And UFC has been so shamelessly, blatantly extracting every possible cent from this sport and industry that they monopolistically control, put out an inferior product increasingly. There has to be an end to that, a turning point. I think we've started to see that. By the way, just a heads up, if you try and announce Aspinall versus Gane for the interim title for IFW under any circumstances, I feel like that might actually be the bridge too far. We have not hit the bridge too far yet, but I'm actually kind of happy, even though I almost never cheer against the success of these combat sports. Why? Because I feed my kids on the success of these combat sports. But I do want to see a scenario where the audience actually has a voice. Because whether you read the MMA Draw, which is great, MMA Fighting, or whoever you read in this sport right now, I hope you do realize at the end of the day that the people buying the tickets are not the UFC's real customers. The real customers are the cities that they get these government contracts from, and the big TV money and stupid sponsorship money and whatever the newest V chain is. The actual paying customers that used to be the lifeblood of that buoyed the UFC, they don't serve anymore. So I'm not surprised, I guess, that we're seeing this. It's actually, in a way, kind of refreshing, because you should get what you pay for. The fighters should be paid what they're worth when the company is doing record year-over-year financials. There has to be some penalty for shamelessly putting out an inferior product and then charging 3 to 5 times X on what it costs. We're finally seeing that.
Yeah. All we ask is for you to try. Just try and we'll be okay. But AK, you are the Prince of Positivity. Ran down some ticket numbers. Interesting email I got earlier today from a gambling site. I'm not going to mention them, but they spoke to industry experts, and not that we'll ever get pay-per-view numbers, but if they were to set a betting line on pay-per-view buys for UFC 315, the over-under, and I kid you not, is set at 60,000. 60,000 for a UFC pay-per-view. Not 600, not 100,000, 60,000.
I thought you were going to say 50.
Yeah. How do you explain the buzz here? Like when you go to your pickup basketball games and you start just draining threes over fools, Are you
Mhm.
telling them with your trash
Mhm.
talk? Are you watching UFC 315, bro? Are you watching? And are they saying yes?
And then I go like Belal, and then I hit a jumper. Yeah. Um, I should try that on Monday.
You should.
So here's so here's the thing. I'm gonna start a fight, Mike. I'm gonna start a fight. Not with BC,
boy.
really, probably with just like America in general. Here's what you gotta know about Canada. And I won't speak for Montreal. I won't speak for Quebec. I won't represent that area. But Canada in general, we don't put up with a lot of bullshit up here. Some people may disagree. We just had a recent election, so the political situation up here is a bit murky. It's a bit tense at the moment. So, but I think in general, most Canadians would agree we don't put up with bullshit, or we don't like to put up with bullshit. And that is kind of what the UFC is putting out there right now, right? So we're going back to Montreal for the first time in 10 years. Guys, this isn't Des Moines. This isn't Kansas City. This isn't Louisville. This isn't Seattle or whatever. Where did they go? Nashville. Where did they ever go recently? Some of the Fight Night road shows, okay? We don't just suck up to the UFC brand here. This is the house that GSP built. We know what a star looks like. It's been a while since they've been here. The last time they went to Montreal, they did not sell out. This was the infamous UFC 186 event that was supposed to have 2 title fights, which I think even if the other one had stayed on, TJ Dillashaw, Hanan Barao, that was supposed to be the main event, fell through. And then Johnson and Horiguchi became the main event, the flyweight championship main event. Even if those fights had both been on, it probably still doesn't do a monster number. I'm just looking here at Wikipedia. Attendance, 10,000. Bell Center, I don't know if they did renovations, but I'm pretty sure even back then it housed well over 10,000. Right now it says it's a 20,000 seat arena. I don't know if they added seats, but I know even back then it was certainly more than 10,000. So did not sell out, did not come close to selling out for last time they came to Montreal. Buy rate was good. Buy rate was 125,000, but this was a different pay-per-view era for the UFC for sure. I mean, they were still doing a lot of shows back then, but I think this was 2015, certainly less fight nights. There was certainly still some scarcity to UFC events. So 125 back then was like a really bad number. Now 125 was like a good number. 125 back then was like a bad number. So it was not an in-demand show. And this one, as Brian so pointed out so well, we would like to have some Canadian star power on there. It doesn't have to be. Or again, you have a can't miss name up there, like a John Jones or something like that. And we're not really getting either with respect to Belal, with respect to Valentina Shevchenko. They're not huge stars. The highest billed Canadian is Ayman Zahabi. And he's doing great, rising up the ranks. Good big fight with Jose Aldo. But he's not a household name up here in Canada. He's not a huge star in Canada. When you think the name Zahabi, most people would just think of his brother. They would think of Faraz Zahabi, of course, and his relationship with GSP, and then it all just leads back to GSP. So Ayman, unfortunately, is being asked to carry this burden of being the highest ranked Canadian. I'm sure he's happy about it, but I would imagine very few are buying tickets or pre-ordering the pay-per-view for Ayman Zahabi or any of the other Canadians on this card. So I have to say, it's not just the chickens come to roost. It's not just the over saturation that we've had of cards. This event could have sold out. You just needed the right storyline at the top. You need the right billing at the top. I think Belal Shavkat would have done better. Again, it's still probably not going to be a massive sellout, but it would have done better. People know that that JDM, as deserving as he is of a shot, is not the number one contender. It is Shavkat. Shavkat was injured, and the UFC schedules these fights to events, not the other way around, right? They don't build events around fights; they build fights around events, if that makes sense, right? So they needed a main event. Belal was ready to defend. Jack Della Maddalena is healthy. They throw him in there. And Valentina Manon Fiorot, a fight that they could have made a long time ago, they're just, this is the one we're going to plop it down on. It's not the stuff that dreams are made of. It's not the stuff that highly anticipated fight weekends are made of. So I'm not surprised at all that we are seeing potentially poor ticket sales. I wonder how much walk-up traffic they're going to have. Probably not that much either. So as a fan base, yeah, we should be disappointed. This should be such a triumphant return to what was a very big and important market for the UFC during its rise in the 2000s. Make no mistake, Canada, Toronto, Montreal, whatever, is not just a place that they visited because, we're dabbling. We just want to expand internationally. These were crucial sites when the UFC was coming up, well before, again, the Endeavor era and all this stuff. These were crucial sites because you had GSP, but because you had this grassroots fighters coming up, because you had such a passionate fan base. I hope we still get to see some of that on Saturday. I hope that the fans who do show up are just blowing that roof off with the noise. but part of me is a little concerned that they'll be like our worst fears will be realized, and you'll get just a very flat looking card and an event that we won't be talking about much after, except for, of course, the implications of the results of the main event, which I assume we'll talk about more soon.
Yes, and for time purposes, we're going to move on to round 4, where we're going to talk about the 2 big fights. So the point for round 3 goes to AK, just drama. Setting up. I'm gonna start a fight right now. And then just a man of positivity. So,
I love St. Louis and Kansas City and all those places. I have nothing against the great state of Missouri, for the record. I don't know why I had to single those places out. And Des Moines, of course, Des Moines.
Yes. So main event is Belal Muhammad versus Della Maddalena, and both guys haven't lost a fight in a very long time. JDM gets his chance, maybe not the most quote unquote deserved chance, but still compelling after the Gilbert Burns win. But what's interesting, AK, and I want to go back to you, the biggest storyline in this fight is not the fight itself. Like you said, it's the aftermath. If Belal wins, Islam Makachev stays at lightweight probably as champ for a little while longer. And if JDM wins, does Islam move up? And it seems like UFC 317 is such a big focal point for fans right now that it almost has overtaken the entire fight, the entire main event. So because of what we're talking about Buzz, AK, are you surprised that the UFC has not leaned into this storyline more? Because I think if they had done this, if they pushed it like this, hey, you want to know what the International Fight Week main event's going to be? You're going to have to watch this fight and see. Maybe have Islam go out there. Who the hell knows? I don't know if he can or not. But you could have moved around this a little bit more and made this more of a focal point, because that's what everyone's talking about. So that, and also, what is the more interesting world to live in? A Belal Muhammad title retain and things staying how they are, or JDM winning and Islam moving up and lightweight gets turned upside down a bit?
Oh, I personally, I want to see Belal retain and, rattle off 3, 4, 5 straight title defenses. That's what I want to see personally. Is it more interesting? No. That's not. That's. I'm a boring person. I want the boring result. The more interesting thing is yes, a crazy upset just by the just JDM becoming champion would be pretty mind blowing. And then of course, yes, the implication like, oh, now is Islam going to come up? What does this mean for Ilya? Does Ilya now fight someone for a vacant title? Does Belal now consider moving up to 185? He's been saying, oh, I could so easily beat Dricus du Plessis. It could create this really quick shift of all these kind of named fighters just suddenly changing divisions and creating these weird, fresh, like, I would hesitate to say super fights, but I guess by definition of like, oh, someone who was a star or champion in one division fighting a champion in another division. But you guys get what I'm saying. I'm kind of not surprised that the UFC hasn't leaned into trying to build up these storylines, probably because, one, as we know, the UFC is not that transparent with these things. They also suck at building storylines. And thirdly, you don't want to make, I think, even any sort of unwritten promises to people, right? Like, you don't want to tell Islam, oh, you're definitely getting the title shot if you beat. Like, they are not in the business of guaranteeing things. It does not benefit the UFC to guarantee anything to its fighters, right? So I feel like there's been unspoken, implications. I think there's been maybe some casual conversations, but I don't think they want anyone officially saying, if this sequence of events happens, this is going to be locked in, this is going to be locked in. They don't do that. The UFC does not do that. And it is ironic, my best friend Mike, it is ironic that we've had boxing, actually, that we, just to bring it full circle, we had boxing that was doing these are the fights we're building up to. This is going to go this way. This is going to go this way. And then boom, don't worry. We're going to get the Haney Garcia rematch. Both guys are going to be coming off wins. Canelo's going to be coming off a dominant performance to school, and then he's going to fight Crawford. So they kind of switched places. And frankly, again, I don't think either sport is, or either combat sport is wearing that cloth quite comfortably. But it doesn't surprise me they haven't. And I'm actually very curious, like, if we even get that kind of intrigue should a JDM win, because nothing is guaranteed. So I'm hoping for stability. I actually think stability is the best thing, but for fans out there, I get it, who have been kind of maybe a little bit bored with the first few months of the UFC in 2025. I totally understand the need to see stuff just get shaken the F up, and set up at least like 2 or 3 possibly exciting title matches for the second half of the year. But the UFC, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think they might have hurt themselves though. Yeah, with with just saying, oh, we're waiting, because fans don't like to wait. Fans do not like to wait in MMA.
BC, you're shaking your head. And I'm not even saying like the UFC needs to be like, hey, buy this pay-per-view to see where Islam Makachev's going to fight next. But even just a little clip of Dana being asked at a press conference, hey, does the main event result matter here? And he just does that little shit-eating grin. We'll see what happens. And that little like, hey, I got something, but I'm not telling you kind of thing. So, but what's the more interesting world, BC? Islam or Belal retaining, or JDM pulling off a pretty big upset and shaking up a couple of divisions, honestly?
Well, that's the crazy thing, the spot that they put the fans in, right? Like, I like Belal Muhammad. I was wrong on him the whole rise. I respect so much about his journey, him pushing to walk out with his own people's flag. Like, there's a lot of good that come out of Belal, even if he's not the most exciting ever. But they're putting fans, I interviewed Belal this, in the past week, and saw the vitriol of the comments of people that just seem to hate him for whatever their reason is. They're putting you in a position to cheer for him to win, by the way, in my opinion, if you want the fights that truly matter. Because if Belal wins and him and Islam hold firm to what we've heard is them not wanting to fight each other due to the friendship of Habib having mentored and trained Belal at times separate from his own camp, then isn't that the path for us to get to Ilya versus Islam, the biggest fight you can make in the sport and the best right now? I mean, the fact that we are here in 2025, where UFC has this level of dominance and control over the entire industry, not to mention their own roster, where Dana at every turn is still criticizing boxing for being a going out of business sale every time, and you never get the fights that you want by the blah, blah, blah. UFC has become boxing so quickly that it's disgusting. And the biggest part of that is not being a slam dunk that they would make the fights that they built their whole reputation on, the slam dunk fights. I mean, we really have to go through a very small list of the fights we deserved as UFC fans over history and didn't get, right? It's like Randy and Fedor, but we understand why to some degree. UFC was never going to do a co-partnership with M1 Global. Okay. GSP versus Anderson Silva, I mean, it would have been nice, but it wasn't as if it was like the only thing left. These two fights, meaning, in my opinion, Ilya versus Islam, when you have a window to make number 1 versus 2 in the same division, and they do, and of course, Jones Aspinall, we got potential right now to go through this calendar year without them. I mean, let's not forget, a year ago ahead of UFC 300, it felt like the promotion had no plan for the main event. And they were just getting closer going, what do we do? I don't think Connor's ready. We'll call Poatan. He'll fix it. Well, he fixed it like 3 times for them last year. I felt like we had that same thing about the Sphere. The Sphere's coming. What are they going to put on there? Is it going to be Connor? No, I mean, it's still good fights, but I think you're getting my point here. The fact that we're left to deduce that we would have to, in some circles, if you like Islam versus Ilya as much as me, and again, why would you not want the 2 best fighters in the sport, 2 of the biggest brands, to go against each other and find out who's the best? Like, you're going to get that chance to get that this year, but you got to specifically cheer for one outcome for it to happen. No, UFC, clean up your own house, be in control. I don't like the history of how they've controlled the fighters with the draconian contracts and with, the heavy-handed ways in which they negotiate and all the tricks they do, like going public with fights that aren't even signed. But they still have that ability. So make the frickin' fights that the fans deserve, not, as you guys eloquently said, and I agree, lay out the schedule and then try to figure out which square pegs and round holes will work together just to passably put off a pay-per-view card. How about you get back to doing what we call you, the greatest promotion in the history of combat sports? It shouldn't matter what's going on Saturday night between JDM and Belal. A fine matchup, by the way, but it shouldn't matter. That shouldn't dictate whether we get a fight we really want or not. But this is where we're at. It doesn't feel like people, like anyone's in control of the wheel. Actually, it does. It feels like TKO is in control of the wheel, trying to get as much value in their own pockets as they possibly can out of this sport. It doesn't feel like Dana anymore has the power or the leverage or the vested interest to be the Dana of old. So yeah, I guess we're going to have to tune into this main event on Saturday. And depending on what you want in the future, you got to cheer for that man to win. What are we doing here? What the frick are we doing here in 2025? I mean, it's less than 2 months out from your biggest card of the year, a celebration of the sport, a Hall of Fame, a fan fest. We should be getting Conor or Ilya versus Islam or something that we can't frickin' miss. You might get that if you cheer for Belal on Saturday. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, I mean, maybe we could take some pressure off those two main eventers. El Hormiguero, which is apparently a very popular show. It's got millions of followers on social media. They will be welcoming in Ilia Topuria on their program tonight, where they are teasing that details for his June 28th fight will be revealed. So perhaps he announces like Dustin Poirier did on Pat McAfee. Maybe that's how the UFC is doing things now. Or perhaps we get the Wolf tickets where it's like, yeah, I'm fighting for a belt. Against who? Oh, I can't say. You'll have to watch UFC 315 to find out.
It depends if Belal wins, guys. Yeah.
Oh, God. Co-main event, BC. You mentioned it. Valentina Shevchenko versus Manon Fiorot for the women's flyweight title. Manon Fiorot is just oozing confidence right now. I spoke with her earlier this week. She doesn't feel like Valentina is the same Valentina. She feels like she's ripe for the picking, essentially. But at least she gets her opportunity now. People thought Zhang Weili might jump her in terms of getting to the title shot. I was one of those folks, but she plays the waiting game and it paid off. So real quick, biggest question you have in this fight between Shevchenko and Fiorot?
It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting to see Valentina as the underdog, even though she is 37 years old, just because of what she did in the last 2/3 of that Grasso rivalry. But the biggest question that I ultimately want to see, as much as does Val still have it to take off yet another absolutely on fire contender who, by the way, has gone through so many former title contenders, title challengers, or champions to get where she is, right? Like just the last two of Rose Namajunas and then what she did to Erin Blanchfield was eye-opening. But I want to see if Manon Fiorot really has the complete game to back up the odds that have her firmly or, comfortably as the betting favorite. And it's not that we don't already know the game that she brings into the I mean, look, her takedown defense was incredible against Erin Blanchfield and allowed her to pick Erin Blanchfield apart like a piñata. The difference maybe is that Blanchfield doesn't move her head and is more of a one-dimensional fighter, whereas Valentina has that complete game. But Fiorot's going to have to show us here that it's not just the takedown defense. It's not just the ability to, efficiently spam with hard shots in the way that she controls the terms of the striking. She's going to have to be great everywhere in the clinch and all of the areas where Valentina can pull on those veteran tricks and that great experience. And the fact, even though it's an overplayed narrative, it's so freaking true. This is her life, mixed martial arts. All right. Whether she's training on a boat or down in El Paso randomly or back in Montreal with Joanna Champion, Valentina is living the life. Somehow she's getting better with age. Is she the same fighter as 3 years ago? No. But the competition around her has gotten better in this division, and she's still the champion at age 37. So that says a lot. I want to see Manon not just win it as the betting favorite on paper, but go in there and seize the title from the champion with no doubt. Show us your greatness in this only division with legitimate depth of what's left of women's MMA in the UFC. That's what I want to see because I got questions. I still feel like she's too one-dimensional. Man, has that dimension been dominant up to this point? Maybe outside a couple moments against Rose where she was kind of challenged. I want to see a real challenge, and I want to see Fiorot swim and come out and show us that 35 or not, she's here and she may be here for a while.
Yeah, that face off the UFC shared of them like somewhere in Montreal, man, looks like a friggin' featherweight compared to Valentina Shevchenko. She looks huge. But biggest question you have about this fight, AK, is about the physicality and if Valentina can take it at 37, because man, it is going to be a hoss in there.
I wonder. I'm a little worried about complacency. Now, Brian's kind of pointed out that is not what we know of Valentina Shevchenko. We have never. I think what has made her such a consistently great champion is we do not think of her as someone that would look past any opponent. We don't think that's what went wrong in the first Grasso fight. I don't see why she would do it with Manon, especially since Manon has been very much so the number one contender for the last 18 months, something like that. If it wasn't for that draw with Grasso in the rematch, Valentina and Manon would have fought already. So I don't think she'll overlook her. But I also think at this age, it's hard not to just lose a little bit of that edge, that mental edge, right? looking ahead to maybe, again, how many fights do I have before I retire? She's never talked about it. A lot of fighters her age, they get that in interviews all the time. Not really something that's come up with her. There is the looming Zhang Weili question. I still want to see Zhang defend her title at 115, but a lot of fans have kind of, they don't care about the Vino Janjarova fight. They just want to see Zhang go up. They want to see her and Shevchenko fight. Like, it would feel like if they never fought, that something would be lost. It feels like these two have to fight at some point in their careers, preferably both of them having titles, right? You want it the most hype way possible, not like further down the road. I'm fine either way, but I'm not dumb. I understand the appeal of champion versus champion fight. Is Valentina thinking about that? Because she cannot have the slightest slip against Manon. Like, I know Manon, to the casual fan, maybe not that well known. Maybe it's not exactly a highlight reel of knockdowns, of like putting her opponents in danger. That's fine, but she's super solid. She has made some very good fighters look pretty mediocre against her. Again, the Erin Blanchfield fight. Erin Blanchfield was so hyped, and Manon just handled her. I mean, just straight up just handled her. Again, probably a size thing, maturity thing. That shouldn't be as much of an issue against Valentina. Yeah, the size, but Valentina's so strong, and she's fought. I feel like she knows how to navigate that sort of thing. But yes, back to my original point: complacency. Is there even the slightest chance that Valentina is looking past Manon? I have to think that's one of the reasons why she's an underdog. Because when I saw at the beginning of the week that Valentina was at plus money, I was very surprised. Valentina by decision is like 2-1, which is extremely confusing to me. So I am picking Valentina all the way. I'm terrible at picking fights. So the way I would see it playing off right now is like we see that Val is just a step slow for whatever reason, just seems a little bit off. And I would have to think it's more of a mental thing than a physical thing. So if that's the case, it would be, again, unlike anything we've seen in Valentina's career, but that's the thing with MMA, that's the thing with combat sports. Every fight is the chance to like see something we've never seen before, and sometimes not in a good way. So picking Valentina, but again, let's not be surprised if we're here and new on Saturday.
It's going to be an interesting fight. All right. We don't need the pomp and circumstance for time purposes. BC gets the point. It's 2-2. There you go. Thank you. So we're going to go to the knockout round. Same question for both gentlemen. 1 minute will decide it for each individual. That includes you, Brian Campbell. 1 minute means 1 minute. AK, you are the home team here. What are we doing here? You want to go first, or you want to pass it over to BC?
Mike, put the number on the screen. Casey, put the number on the screen. Come on, let's go. Let's go, Mike.
All right. 1 minute on the clock. AK, we're just going to throw this question out right now. What is the low-key banger for UFC 315? Go.
I'm going to go. I should say Natty Ice and Alexa Grasso, but I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go with what could be either the best fight on the card or could be a truly, truly, truly terrible fight. Marc-André Barriault and Bruno Silva. Going back to gambling for a second, if you guys have seen like some of the odds, some of the props for this fight, I am telling you, it's one of those fights people do not know what's going to happen. Marc-André on a 3-fight losing streak, Blindado Silva on a 4-fight losing streak. This is a loser leaves town match. So again, you could have either guy just going for broke, going for that big finish, looking to not just save their jobs, but also prove like, hey, I had a streak of bad luck, but I'm not out of it. I can still be a top 20 middleweight, or get middleweight real fast. But again, both guys looking to preserve their UFC careers, and not like a staring contest, but neither guy really committing to anything big. But I'm intrigued. I've had this sort of marked down, I think, since this fight was announced. Like, I think it's perfect matchmaking, and I am rooting for someone to get a knockout. But if it goes the other way and turns into like trash, I'm kind of gonna applaud that too. So there you go. There's your low-key banger, quote-unquote banger. Definition may vary.
Salesmanship 101 from the great AK. BC, what's the low-key banger? What's your favorite fight on the card that's not getting the attention? 1 minute on the clock and go.
Well, shout out to AK. He mentioned it right there. Alexa Grasso against Natalia Silva is a hell of a matchup, especially right now atop this deep 125-pound division, and especially with the target so aggressively on the 31-year-old Grasso's back that, like, this could be somehow her last chance at the elite. Look, I saw a lot of people basically dumbfoundedly, but come out and say, look, she may have lost it already. What the decline that she showed in the second and third Shevchenko fights, according to people, I don't see it as aggressively. Look, Shevchenko beat her with somewhat basic stuff in the third fight, but that's also a great fighter through a prolonged rivalry, figuring out, leaning on those strengths and getting it done. And I think the performance of Grasso has people doubting whether Valentina's still it. That's why she's the betting underdog out under here. And to see Grasso as the underdog against a streaking Silva, who yes has won all 6 of her UFC fights, yes has won 12 in a row, yes is a great fighter, but not a finisher, has not really beaten someone exactly on this level. I think it's crazy that Grasso is an underdog and being counted out when this crossroads fight will probably determine who fights for the title after the co-main event.
All right. Nicely done. That was like 85
That's
seconds.
pretty good.
So
You got it
Those
there.
are
You got it there.
Yeah.
You got it.
the over-under was 1:45, and you just smashed the under. So get your votes in, everybody. Is it BC? Is it AK? Which set of initials get it done? You decide. Lots of stuff happening, obviously, this weekend. We'll preview show tomorrow. Get you ready for UFC 315. Saturday, People's Pre-Fight Show. We'll have the watch party. Jed will be here in Command Center 4.0. We'll watch all of the magic unfold. Jose is in Montreal, boots on the ground, so you get all the post-fight interviews and such. We get the press conference later on today. AK and all the weigh-in fun tomorrow. I mean, just content galore. AK and I on to the next one on Sunday. We'll be live on the YouTube channel getting after it. Post-fight show. And then on later on Sunday, a little journey will be taken. An airplane will be hopped on, and we're doing some traveling to bring you something absolutely friggin' outstanding. I will leave
Involve golf
the
clubs?
details for later. It may or may not involve golf clubs.
All right.
It probably will.
The
I
end
don't know
of
if you
Tiger
guys are
Woods'
ready.
marriage involved golf clubs, just for the record.
Oh my! Too soon.
Sure did.
Too soon.
I don't know if you guys are ready. I don't know if you guys are ready for what's going to happen. I'll just leave it at that. So Casey is here. He's got no sleeves on, and that can only mean one thing, that he's probably going to work out, but maybe it means two things. We have a winner. Who is it?
Your winner today with over 2/3 of the votes, 68%. 68%. Your winner is the beautiful Brian Campbell.
Oh, BC gets it done. What
I
a
mean,
glorious return. BC,
Thank you. Yes.
take the floor. It's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you to this platform below the loins. Thank you to my opponent, AK Lee. And I just want to say, I was on here once, and I asked EKC Leiden if he's willing to get in that bare knuckle pit circle against one Oscar Willis, and he said yes. And I'm gonna hold him to that while I'm here. Thank you.
wow.
Oh yeah.
Dave
He's
Feldman.
just waiting for the contract. He's just waiting for the contract. He's been saying it for months. He's
but,
ready.
you know, thank you. It was great to be here, guys. All right. The total package is back in your face. All right.
BC putting AK in the verbal torture rack. AK, your response.
That's the other side. Nothing. I just need to hold on. Get a little. No, not high. Oh, I've got a weird. There we go. There it is. It's okay, Mark. It's okay, little record. It's okay. It's all right. Sorry. Hold on. Okay, just.
Oh, you ate it.
You don't have to worry about that again.
Oh, man. All right, Case, you can hit the music. Got to get on out of here. Appreciate you all watching, especially since we had to shift the start time 90 minutes. Thank you
Thanks,
to BC.
Brian.
Thank you to AK. Thank you to Casey. Thank you to the iconic voice of Esther Lynn, who's going to take you home at the tail end of this episode. You guys are all the best. We'll be back next week to recap UFC 315 and much more. Until then, everybody, be nice to each other. We'll see you next week right here on Between the Links. Good night, everybody. What could have been? What could have been?
This has been Between the Links, an MMA fighting production on the Vox Media Network.